Kawhi Leonard is heading back to Toronto. The league's reacting like it's 2019 all over again, and every outlet's chasing that same nostalgic angle. But that's not what matters here. What matters is the money and where it's actually going. Because this trade isn't really about two rosters swapping places. It's about two franchises trading away pieces of their own timelines. Look past the headline names for a second. The real weight of this deal sits at the bottom of the package, in the draft capital. The Clippers walked away with a 2027 first-round swap, then two more first-round picks in 2031 and 2033, fully unprotected, no conditions attached. They also locked in second-round picks in 2030 and 2033. Think about what 2033 actually looks like. Leonard will be long gone from the league by then, and there's a real chance Toronto's deep into some rebuild, scrapping for lottery position, which means the Clippers didn't just get draft picks, they got a claim on Toronto's future lottery odds, the single most valuable asset type in this league. Add the two second-rounders, and they've got Toronto's future locked down from multiple angles. Now, the outside reaction to this package is not kind. On the surface, it reads like a clean win-win. Clippers cash in their aging star for young talent and a pile of picks. Raptors go all in, chasing 2019 again. But pull back, and this starts to look like a dangerous bet for Toronto. Leonard's health has been a persistent question mark for years. And giving up a pick as far out as 2033 on top of that risk, that's the kind of move that can wreck a franchise's timeline down the road. The Clippers closed the book on the Kawhi era and walked away with a cold, calculated return. Toronto, meanwhile, just put its entire future on the table to chase one more shot at the mountaintop. Now let's break down what this trade actually means for the other side of the deal. Los Angeles. Pull up the team ability shift chart. Losing Kawhi Leonard, the ultimate defensive anchor, only dropped the Clippers' defensive rating from 15th to 16th. That's not the real story. The real story is steals. That red line falls off a cliff, from an elite 6th in the league, all the way down to 16th, right on top of the league average line. Look at the raw numbers. Kawhi's individual steal rate sat at 853. Ingram's is at 538. That's not a gap Ingram's length alone is going to close. Kawhi wasn't just a stopper, he was the pressure valve for the entire defense. Take that away, and the fast break leading against a transition defense already sitting 11th in the league only gets worse. On offense, the loss cuts even deeper. Kawhi was the player holding together a broken system through sheer individual force. We've talked about this before. This roster doesn't move the ball well, and it doesn't move its feet well either. Kawhi covered for both of those problems, night after night, with isolation scoring and post-ups that nobody else on this roster can replicate. Now that safety net is gone, starting lineup scoring ability dropped from 16th to 21st. Picture the final 2 minutes of a playoff fourth quarter. The offense stalls out completely. Somebody has to force a mismatch and get a bucket anyway. Look at this roster right now. That guy isn't on it. That gap is going to show up exactly when it matters most for a team that just chose to reboot around new stars. But a full teardown was never actually on the table here. The Clippers just opened a brand new arena, Intuit Dome. Keeping that building full and that business running requires a certain baseline of competitiveness and a name people recognize. That's exactly why this wasn't a straight salary dump. Bringing back a 28-year-old who can still contribute right away, like Ingram, was the point. And here's the twist. This pain might be exactly what Coach Ty Lue's been waiting for. With Kawhi gone as the primary ball stopper, offensive control finally shifts fully to Darius Garland. The pace gets forced up. A faster, more connected system, the one buried under Kawhi's isolation game for years, finally has room to surface. From a front office standpoint, this is a clean timeline reset. Look at the cap structure. They shed Kawhi's $50.3 million final year salary and split that money across Ingram's $40 million and Dick's roughly $7.1 million. That buys back real financial flexibility. The age curve matters just as much. Darius Garland is 26, Brandon Ingram is 28, John Collins is 28, Derrick Jones Jr. is 29, Benedict Mathurin is 24. This roster just shifted away from an older core and landed squarely in that mid to late 20s prime window. The Clippers stay competitive in the short term, and they're still holding those unprotected future picks they just pulled off Toronto, a card they can play whenever the next big trade window opens. They walked away from their true number one option. They're accepting some clutch scoring gaps and some defensive cracks in the short term, but in exchange, they bought themselves a sustainable path forward. That's the full calculation behind this deal from the Clippers side of the ledger. Now let's turn to the other side of this deal, the new-look Toronto Raptors and how this reshapes the entire Eastern Conference picture. Pull up the ability rankings. Adding Kawhi Leonard as the closer this roster never had, Toronto's starting five jumps from a middling 14th in the league all the way up to 6th, squarely in top contender territory. For years, this team's had a strange contradiction. Elite passing, elite ball movement, great looks generated night after night, but nobody to finish the job when it mattered. That gap is closing fast on paper. Scoring ability climbs from 21st to 16th, and that number is just a simple stat aggregate. It doesn't even account for what happens once Kawhi is actually drawing extra defenders on the floor. His gravity alone could push that scoring number well past 16th once the season starts. The passing numbers tell an even bigger story. Toronto was already second in the league in that category. Add a legitimate number one option, and that ability jumps to first, best in the entire league, out of all 30 teams. Steals ability climbs from 10th to 3rd. Rebounding jumps from 23rd all the way to 9th. That's not just the Kawhi effect. Trayce Jackson-Davis, the 10th man in this new ability ranking, raises the floor on the interior across the board. While sacrificing some bench depth to land Kawhi, their top 10 overall mark only slipped from 6th to 9th, keeping them firmly in elite territory. Here's where it gets interesting though. Look at the outside shooting split. The team's actual three-point numbers from last season sit at 26th in the league, but the underlying three-point shooting ability, factoring in this new roster, climbs from 26th to 21st. Adding a reliable shooter like Kawhi directly fixes a real problem here. All that ball movement generating open looks nobody could convert. Still, 21st keeps this roster right on the league average line. Closing that gap for real is still unfinished business if Toronto wants to compete at the top of the East. And here's the catch. The front office doesn't have another move left to make. Absorb Leonard's roughly $50.3 million final year salary, then layer in the 2-year, $126 million max extension waiting on the other side of this deal. And Toronto's cap flexibility disappears completely. Elite passing, elite defense. And now, in Kawhi Leonard, the closer this roster's been missing for years. The cost of that upgrade is a completely locked cap sheet with 0 cards left to play. What that means for this Raptors timeline going forward comes down to how the front office handles what's left. Let's close this out. What this blockbuster actually means for both franchises heading into next season. The data and the salary cap sheet agree on one thing. This trade isn't the finish line. It's the setup for the next earthquake. Toronto brings in Kawhi Leonard the closer this roster's needed for years, and their starting five jumps to 6th in the league. Their path forward looks like a real push at the top of the East. But their single biggest remaining need hasn't gone anywhere. The three-point shooting number still sits in the bottom tier of the league. Kawhi's arrival pushes that ability ranking up to 21st. Better, but still stuck on the wrong side of league average. Leave that unaddressed, and Toronto runs straight into a ceiling once the games get tight in a deep playoff run. Here's the real problem. The financial flexibility to fix that shooting gap doesn't fully exist anymore. Absorb Kawhi's roughly $50.3 million salary, add in the max extension already lined up, and Toronto's total payroll blows past the luxury tax line entirely, straight into the second apron, the most restrictive tier in the league. That kind of financial squeeze always comes with a cost. Expect roster moves, and probably soon. Talks already circulating around 2 contracts in particular. Jakob Poeltl at $19.5 million, with his role getting squeezed by younger bigs. And RJ Barrett's $29.6 million deal, given the overlap in his game with what's already on this roster. Trading either off for cheaper shooting depth looks less like a possibility and more like a necessity, whether that happens later this offseason or at the deadline. Over in Los Angeles, next season looks completely different. This is the start of a full reboot, built around Darius Garland as the true offensive engine. Ingram, Collins, Jones Jr., Mathurin, a young core in that mid to late 20s window, finally aligned on one timeline. That group is built to push the pace, moving away from the isolation-heavy stretches that defined the Kawhi era. The Clippers also get some breathing room. Collins' $26 million expiring deal clears space that could fund a future extension for Mathurin. And there's real chatter about using Bogdan Bogdanovic's $16.02 million contract, along with those fully unprotected first-round picks they just took off Toronto, to chase another interior upgrade. One team just bet its entire future on one more shot at the top, the other walked away from its one true superstar for a sustainable path forward. How that plays out is anyone's guess, but the data's already tracking just how risky both timelines really are. So here's the question for you. Does Toronto's all-in move, betting the future and risking a financial crunch to bring in Kawhi, get them back to 2019? And for the Clippers, now that the timeline's aligned and the flexibility's there, when do they pull the trigger on the next big move? Drop your breakdown in the comments. That's the show for today. If you enjoyed it, a like and a subscribe goes a long way. See you next time.